Welcome to Architrave Gaming. I'm the Archmaster. The Lord is generous. Thank you for dropping by. This is a video by request of Yekrep. He asked me to look into another YouTuber called Arbiter of Worlds and look at their video on balancing player skill versus character skill. I already made a video on it, and this commenter is like, hey, this other guy talked about something similar. So I watched that guy's video, and I was like, first of all, his channel is really good. He talks about a lot of stuff I completely agree with, except we got to this point, and it's like, I like what you're saying, yes. You blend player skill and character skill, yes. And then he said something, I was like, I don't quite agree with that. I'm going to make a video on it, because Yekrep is like, watch this guy. So it's like, sure, I'll tell you what I think. First of all, you can go ahead and totally check him out. Arbiter of Worlds, it's good content as far as I can tell. But there was something he said. It was about when you use player skill versus character skill, and he was giving the example of a barbarian who gets arrested for being violent in the streets, and he's brought to the king, and the player is very eloquent. He has a high IQ and all that, and he gives this super fancy eloquent speech to the king, but the character kind of translates his words, and the character is a barbarian. He doesn't know how to speak like that. He's like, oh yeah, la la la. He gives a dumbed down version, but it still has the same intent behind it. It still has the same, like, hey, I want to tell the king this, right? But the player-specific wording is not translated. The character himself, you have to take into account their personality and intelligence and charisma and all that stuff, right? And that, I totally agree with. That sounds good to me, that's fine. And that's where you would have the role, right? To see, all right, how good is your character at actually interpreting what you want him to say? You give the intention, but how good are they at executing your intention, right? That makes sense, that's fine. But then he said that, there's a different character who has a high charisma, like a cleric or a bard or something, and the player does not. The player's kind of shy, or they don't have it. They don't have anything specific they want to say, and they just say, I tell the king, the most optimal thing to get us out, right? To make us leave. And that's not an exact quote, but it was essentially a hand wavy thing. It's like I tell the king essentially, here's my goal. Here's what I want the king to know, and so I tell him, right? And I disagree with that point, because I would never allow that in my game. I would never allow my players to say, all right, I tell the king the most optimal thing in the situation, or like I tell him the basic of this. It's like, you need to be more specific. You absolutely do. I'm not going to let that fly, because I wouldn't let it fly in combat. If you're there in combat and you're like, I don't know where to go, I don't know who to attack, GM, I do the most optimal thing in combat. Just make me do the most tactical thing. It's like, no, you do the most tactical thing. I'm not going to play the game for you. That's not my job. It's your job to actually think about it and decide, okay, there's an ogre and a couple of orcs. If I walk in front of the ogre, I could get surrounded. I shouldn't do that, right? It's your job to strategize exactly what you're doing, right? You don't need to give me all the details down to how you're gripping your sword, right? But a reasonable level of skill and input on your part is required. And in Arbiter of Worlds example, it was just kind of hand waved. It's like, I tell them the most optimal thing. It's like, I would never do that. And in the same way, his example of searching for traps, it's like, hey, I can say my character is completely diligent all the time, and they never miss anything, and I search for a trap. Like, you can say that, right? But that your intention is translated into the character. Let's roll to see just how diligent they are, right? You can't just like declare it, right? You can declare your intention. I want to be completely diligent. I want to stay awake all night. I want to find the trap. But you roll to find out. I think that's entirely reasonable. But there's a certain level of specificity required before you get to roll. I don't let you just be like, all right, I look for traps. I say, okay, there is a corridor, a 50-foot corridor down. There are 10 5-foot spaces. Which one do you search for a trap for, right? You can't just say, I searched the whole thing. You have to say, I searched this 5-foot section for a trap or a secret door, right? And I do actually have a search mechanic in my system, but there's not just one or two, like perception and investigation. No, it's actually per thing. So stealth, as an example, I have the stealth skill in A&A. Arches and avatars, my system. But I don't, okay, so you can make a dexterity stealth check, and so you're trying to sneak around. You're using your own dex to sneak, right? You're using your knowledge of stealth and your proficiency, your practice in stealth with your own body to sneak, right? But if you're trying to look for someone who is hiding, look for someone else who is stealthing, that's when you make an intelligence stealth check, where you're like, I'm practiced, I'm trained, I know how to stealth. I know what places in here someone might be hiding. Like, I see the shadows, I see the things, and so your training and experience with stealth helps you find the person. So that's when you can make an intelligence stealth check. Same thing with an intelligence creature check. It's like, I'm looking for a hiding creature, not a hiding monster. It's something other than a human, right? Or like the assess skill. You can use assess for all man-made objects, buildings, structures, vehicles, swords, items, all of it. So if you're looking for a secret door in my system, you can roll assess, but you can't just say like, all right, GM, here's the entire dungeon, I roll for trap. It's like, no. Which 5-foot section are you rolling? You can stand in a section and you can search that. You can search the floor, you can search the walls and the ceiling, but you can only search one per check, right? And so I require you to actually specify what you're doing in the same way that in combat, you can't just say, I attack. It's like, you attack who? Which 5-foot space are you targeting? That orc in that 5-foot space? Okay, now you may roll your attack roll because you've specified exactly what you're doing, right? You have to be specific. You have to say, all right, GM, I'm asking the king to leave, pretty please, because we love him. It's like, all right, that's your one specific thing. Go ahead and roll your check, right? Or it's like, all right, I tell the king we will, destroy his entire land if he doesn't let us go. That's your specific approach. Okay, roll the die, right? You have to actually tell me what you're doing. I would never allow the hand waving of just, I say whatever's optimal. It's like, no, that's not playing the game. That's robbing the player of any meaningful choice. And here, real quick, if you're a 5e player, you may wonder, well, what's the meaningful choice in telling me I have to search each 5-foot square? It's like, I'm just going to keep searching every 5-foot square. Do you want me to roll every time? It's like, that's the thing. A&A fixes that. Every time you make a skill check, you spend an aspect, remember? And you only have a limited number of aspects. So it's actually a choice, like, which 5-foot space am I searching for traps? I can't do this an unlimited number of times. Like, exactly. So it actually does give you a meaningful choice. So anyway, that is my response. Yekrep, I watched the videos, I liked them. That's just one thing I disagreed on. I would tweak it slightly and say a little more specificity, not quite so broad, but all in all, I agreed with so much of what he said, and I'm really enjoying the series. So thank you for recommending it. And thank you to my patron, Jack McCarthy, for paying me $5 a month to do this. I'm so grateful. And any other patrons that might join. Like and subscribe, feed the algorithm. It's super helpful, and God bless.